Hey everyone, welcome to another attempt at doing the bullet for May the 12th, 2022. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, as he did 2 hours ago on very short notice, Craig DeLuz of The Rundown. Craig, thanks for taking time again out of your day to join us, man.
It's always a pleasure, sir. I'm glad we were able to get it back in, and glad you guys are doing well.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. I don't want that one. I want Polite Society Podcast for the... There we go. I have to get social media connected up. It is now. So for those of you who are just stumbling on the stream now, we did at 5 p.m. Central Time do our normal start. We got just a few minutes into it, and a no-kidding real tornado siren went off, and Susan opened up my studio door and said, "We've got to go right now." And so I shut the stream down, and we boogied to shelter. We're fine here at the Lathrop household. Everything missed us. Just very, very, very minor damage. Nothing we'll even need to file insurance for. So a lot of wind came around here. A branch came down, but that's it. So all is good with us.
I, on the other hand, found it to be incredibly stressful as I worried about my good friends there in South Dakota. So I'm glad you're doing okay, sir.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and get started. And as we do, I want to remind you, if you want to be a part of the show, you can comment on either the Facebook or YouTube video, or if you have Twitter, you can comment with the hashtag Bullet Podcast, and we'll get your comment on the air. Then the Twitter one is actually the fastest one to get to me. There is no delay like there is through Facebook and YouTube. So I want to start off with we have two press releases from SAF, and I'm going to go ahead and increase the font here so my older eyes can see. But the first one, a three-judge panel for the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals on Wednesday struck down a California prohibition on sales of semi-automatic rifles to young adults in the 18 to 20-year-old range, remanding the case back to the district court for further proceedings in a win for the Second Amendment Foundation. The case is known as Jones versus Bonta, and to give us a little bit more time later in the show, I'm going to condense this down. Majority opinion was written by Judge Ryan Nelson, joined by Judge Kenneth Lee, both of whom are Donald Trump appointees, and in part by Judge Sidney Stein from the Southern District of New York, a Bill Clinton appointee. Judge Stein also dissented in part. What's interesting is in his dissent, Judge Stein said, look, every time a pro-gun bill is turned over, it goes en banc to the 9th Circuit in full, and then it gets reversed. So for now, this is a win. I want to get to the quote from my boss, Alan Gottlieb. "We are delighted with the opinion. The court majority rightly recognized that delaying the exercise of a right until age 21 does irreparable harm. It also applied strict scrutiny to the semi-auto ban. He noted this ruling could have an impact on another case challenging a similar prohibition in Washington State, which is also part of the 9th Circuit. There, the prohibition was adopted via a citizen initiative in 2018 and was challenged by the SAF and the NRA. That one is still pending. My understanding is that an attorney for SAF has been in touch with the 9th Circuit today, but there's nothing further that I've been able to find on that. Craig, it's stunning. 18 to 20-year-olds have Second Amendment rights.
Well, what's interesting that they pointed out here is not just that they have rights, or that they have Second Amendment rights, but the point is that they're adults. They're not supposed to be treated differently or separately than other entities, than other human beings. I mean, if you're 18, civilly and criminally liable for the decisions that you make, and your legal decisions should, or your decision to arm yourself or not arm yourself should be the same exact way. Now, mind you, it still means that, because most or a traditional centerfire rifles, basically they can now own or possess a Californicated centerfire rifle, one that either does not have a detachable magazine or has a workaround or is featureless. So that hasn't changed. It also hasn't changed their ability to be able to purchase other firearms. The fact is that this is only really a partial win, but it is a win. It is a win nonetheless, and it's one that we're looking forward to celebrating here in California.
Yes, absolutely. I want to get a comment in here real quick. George, over on the Facebook side, says, "Whoops, that didn't. Why did that not go through? Something is not right here. There we go. Let's try that again. There we go. Let's get more wins. Constitutional carry nationwide. George, that's a ways off. I believe we're going to see it. I believe it's taken from the 1930s, so it's taken almost 90 years to get from true freedom to now. I don't think it'll take 90 years to get back, but it's not going to happen this year. But I do believe it will happen.
Well, it will. I'm confident that it will eventually. And the main thing that's going to take is pushing these lawsuits. The great thing about a place like California is they are guaranteed to overstep their bounds. And as they overstep their bounds, we just have to have the willingness to continue to push these suits up through the courts, get them to the Supreme Court so that we can challenge them. Yes.
Want to get one more? We had one more press release. This one today from SAF. A new report from the Centers for Disease Control focusing on a spike in gun-related violence pulls data out of context and demonstrates how the CDC is up to its old tricks under the Biden administration. All violent crime was up in 2020, the year in which the CDC research focused, said CCR KBA Chairman Alan Gottlieb. But the CDC, which is not a crime control agency, has an unhealthy fixation on trying to make guns the issue, turning the Second Amendment into a public health problem. The CDC report showing gun-related deaths is alarming, he added, but even more alarming is the return of the CDC under Joe Biden's administration to its assumed role as a gun control advocacy agency. This is why gun owners support legislation to keep the CDC out of anything remotely connected to firearms policy. And then I'm going to go down a little bit here. Gottlieb pointed out to the data from the FBI Uniform Crime Report for 2020, showing an estimated 5.6% increase in violent crime over 2019. Aggravated assaults were up by 12.1%, and murder and non-negligent manslaughter were up more than 29%, including crimes where guns were not involved. In any given year, he noted, more people are murdered with knives, blunt objects, and even hands and feet than killed with rifles of any kind, yet gun prohibitionists will still use CDC data to push for bans on certain types of rifles. We talked a little bit about the CDC suggestions yesterday, Dan Wass and I did, including one major one. The big push is they want to, believe it or not, Craig, they want to plant more trees and make more grass-covered areas because that will drop violent crime if there are more trees. And I just speculated that murders will go down because there's more cover to hide behind.
Well, here's the thing, and then when you study statistics, you learn there's a difference when you're comparing two different things. There's correlative and causative, right? In other words, correlative means A and B are heading down the same direction or the same path, but A does not necessarily cause B. Causative means they're headed down the same path because A causes B. What they wind up doing oftentimes in these studies and this data and their information is they make the assumption that A causes B. But what's interesting is in this case, not only are gun laws and violent crime not only are they not causative, they're not even correlative, because in most states, in particular in places where these numbers have gone up, you've actually seen gun laws get stricter. But see, there is an area of law where it's actually gotten looser. And guess what that is? That is in the criminal justice system. That is in the smart on crime. That is the decriminalizing crime. Taking felonies, turning them into misdemeanors, and taking criminals, whether they have a violent history or not. They say it's not supposed to be violent criminals, but they let the violent ones out, let them out on the streets, let violent criminals who've been removed from the country, once they come back into the country, we won't remove them again. We'll let them out of jail. There is a direct correlation between those laws and the increase in violent crime. And I believe, when you look at who's committing the crimes, I believe you'll also find that the effect is not just correlative, but it's causative.
Absolutely. If you lock up those that are committing violent crimes and keep them locked up, or deport them and make sure they stay deported, violent crime will drop. It's a very, very small percentage of people that will commit violent crime. And if you take care of that very small percentage and not worry about things like maybe, I don't know, somebody who's smoking marijuana and got caught with it, yeah, if they don't need a long prison sentence, you got room for the very violent criminals in prisons.
Well, and you know, in terms of looking at criminal justice reform, and I think that Tim Scott led a bill through the legislature, through the U.S. Congress, and President Trump signed it. When you look at some criminal justice reform, I believe that they passed, it corrected and undid some of that, right? But overwhelmingly, the people who were locked up were not people who were, not people who were innocent. These were people who were engaged in a dangerous business, and they engaged in dangerous and violent activity as a part of that, and as such, deserved significant time in jail. And I think what we found was, from the 1990s until, quite frankly, the mid-2010s, we found that when we got them off the street and we showed that there are consequences for deciding to break the law, we saw crime go down every year, year after year. And it wasn't until folks like Kamala Harris, our current vice president, former senator of California, and former attorney general in California, till they started pushing this smart on crime, let the criminals out policies, that we started to see this massive increase in crime in general, as well as violent crime.
Yeah. You start giving violent offenders more chances. Guess what? They're going to take them.
Right. Well, and at the same time, you're telling law-abiding citizens, if you want to exercise your fundamental right to defend yourself against those violent criminals, we're going to make it as hard as possible for you. And if you violate the myriad of confusing laws that we put in place, then we're going to send you to jail.
Well, that kind of dovetails nicely into the next story I want to talk about. This one is by Lee Williams, who is SAF's investigative reporter. He wrote up a piece that hit the gun mag yesterday, and basically, the title is "Biden's Plan to Eliminate Gun Dealers to Eliminate Guns." And there has been, I'm going to pull this article up again because I want to get the number exactly right. There's been a 500% increase in revocation of FFL licenses in the past year by the Biden administration. And a little bit into the article, simple paperwork mistakes that would have barely merited a mention before the Biden took office now trigger an FFL revocation. According to one industry expert, the ATF changed the definition of willful. Now, even the most minor slip-up is considered a willful violation of law, and there are no excuses or second chances. We've been told that the vast majority of ATF agents don't like Biden's zero-tolerance policy. However, they're still clicking their heels and following orders willfully. How else could they have revoked 273 FFLs in just 11 months? Their willingness to obey unconstitutional orders is just further proof the ATF needs to be abolished, Williams writes. And I'm right there with him. The ATF is an agency that could easily, everything in there could be done by the FBI. Right now, if you fill out a 4473, does the ATF check your background? Nope, the FBI does.
Oh, no, you're 100% correct. And this is, like you said, one of the groups that I worked with, actually, when I began working with FPC, before it was FPC, there was a group called the California Association of Federal Firearms Licensees, right? Which is basically firearms retailers in the state of California. And so I became very familiar with the process that they go through in terms of how they're regulated here in the state of California and how they're regulated federally. And they are regulated quite vigorously at that particular level. What I found to be interesting in particular about this thing is, there used to be a time that with the exception of extraordinary circumstances, and I'll read this to you real quick, there are certain things that will guarantee, that used to be guaranteed, all right, this is going to get you your license taken away. If you transfer a firearm, willfully transferring or knowingly transferring a firearm to a prohibited person, failing to run the required background check, falsifying records such as firearms transaction form, failing to respond to an ATF tracing request, or refusing to permit ATF to conduct an inspection in violation of the law. I mean, these are the sorts of things that, I list just about all of those things are things that I'm like, if you do those things, yeah, you should lose your license. I mean, unless you have a good explanation for the last two, you should lose your license on any of those, right?
Yes.
But when you do it based on just minor paperwork, and I will say this, I've been saying this, 2016 was when I started talking about how anti-gunners, what they're doing is they realize they can't get around the whole, shall not be infringed thing. So they know you have a right to have a gun, but you don't have a right to buy a gun. You don't have a right to sell a gun. You don't have a right to buy ammunition, or have ammunition, or the ammunition you want. You don't have a right to the ammunition that you want, or the gun that you want. And you don't have a right to put your gun store wherever you want to put it. All of these things, what they're doing is they're nibbling away at the Second Amendment by tearing away at the fringes. And they've been doing it at the local level, and this now is an attempt to do it at the federal level. We're going to go after these folks. And these are not the bad actors that they're like, okay, there's a handful of FFLs where a huge percentage of all crime guns seem to be coming from, right? That's not these guys, right? No. That's not these folks who are losing their license. These are people, maybe some of them are mom and pop shops who, maybe I filed the paperwork in the wrong place or I categorized something wrong. They're the ones who are being punished and having their licenses taken away.
There's a 9-digit approval number that the FBI reads to you over the phone. And if you transpose 09 into 90, you're going to lose your FFL. Yep. That's what we're talking about. That minor of an error, you could lose your FFL. And that's what these rogue gun dealers are doing. Yeah.
And by the way, so the guys, when the ATF officers, a lot of them who are coming out and doing these inspections and whatnot, they're not the ones who in the end are making these rulings. It's someone back at HQ who's making these decisions, and they're the ones that in the end are making decisions and removing people's licenses. Just as an aside, many of these guys who are going out and doing these inspections, they are as frustrated as you and I are about a lot of this stuff.
And I want to use that to dovetail off into this. There are a lot of people that are saying that if things ever turn real, that police and military and everybody's going to be on our side. Guess what? This is evidence they won't. Because if the ATF agents right now want to keep their job, they have to do Biden's bidding. They're doing Biden's bidding. If things get worse, the government's going to turn up the pressure on the agents. Things get worse, they're going to turn up pressure on FBI. Things get worse, they're going to turn up pressure on federal marshals and the Army and so forth and so on. Do not count on a lot of people. There are going to be a few military, there will be a few police, there will be a few authorities that defect, but not darn many. They're going to follow orders. They've been trained to do that. They're going to continue.
Well, I will disagree with you slightly in that a lot of these things are things that are coming down from the policies from the higher ups, and the decisions are being made by the higher ups. So I would say amongst the rank and file, it'll probably be the same percentage that you have in society. Some are going to go with us, some are going to be with us, and some aren't. I don't know. Maybe that's just the optimist in me, but I'm believing that is hopefully that is something that is going to happen in the far, if it's going to happen, and it's going to happen in the far future.
Yeah, and my point is saying that is we need to work as hard as we possibly can to make sure it never ever gets there.
Yes. Oh, I completely agree. I've never lived through a shooting war, and I don't want to live through a shooting war. The great thing about our American system is we have the ability of nonviolent revolution every election cycle. Let's make sure that we make sure those elections are functional, and that we are involved and engaged in putting our best foot forward.
Absolutely. Next story I want to get to this, and we venture off from Second Amendment. It's Second Amendment related, but we get off into First Amendment. In Arundel County, Maryland, they passed a law that every gun store, when they sell a gun, they must hand out literature produced by the county that is basically anti-gun. I mean, on its face, it's supposed to be suicide prevention, but
right.
They're getting hit with a First Amendment lawsuit saying that, look, you can't force us to say what you want to say. And right. I'm going to read just a little bit of the from the article here. Maryland's Anne Arundel County has been hit with a federal lawsuit for allegedly violating the First Amendment rights of local gun shops with a mandate those businesses post and make available county-produced gun safety literature that discusses suicide prevention. The Baltimore Sun editorial board declared in a Tuesday editorial the lawsuit screams a kind of Second Amendment absolutism that only hurts their cause. Baltimore Sun, I would think you would be a First Amendment absolutist. The gun stores ought to be able to say whatever they want to say. They shouldn't have words forced down their mouth.
Right. It's called forced speech.
Yes.
And that's exactly what it is, and especially in particular because oftentimes in these cases when the government puts together the data and the information, it's almost always wrong. The information is almost never accurate. And the truth is that if these organizations were working directly, if groups like, well, you have groups like NSSF that work with suicide prevention organizations that can develop pamphlets that, you know what, gun stores would willingly include that and hand that out. But they want to do it voluntarily. They don't want to be forced or compelled. They want to at least know what they're handing out is in fact accurate. But we know that the data and the information that they're giving, in particular on suicides, is completely and utterly wrong. They make it out like if you own or possess a firearm or you have a firearm in your home, you are more likely to commit suicide. That is just false. That goes back to the causative and correlative. A great example. Firearms are completely and utterly banned in Japan, yet year after year, they are in the top list of countries where people commit suicide. And there's no guns there. Now, maybe they should ban rope. I don't know. Maybe they should ban sharp, whatever they used to do, the other stuff. But my point
they should ban tall buildings because you can't, if you jump off, a A 2-foot balcony, you may not do enough damage.
Right. But the point being is that it's a mental health issue. It's not a gun issue. But having said that, I think that in many cases, firearms retailers would be open to the idea of including a pamphlet and information on suicide prevention when they hand stuff out. Just, make it voluntary. Don't make it mandatory. That's just my perspective.
Yeah. I am, speaking for me, I am both a Second Amendment absolutist and a First Amendment absolutist.
Right.
The state should have no say in anything that I say, whether they're making me say it or whether they're saying I cannot say it. And they should have absolutely no say in what I choose in firearms, from, all the way down from a 10/22 up to, a fully operational M1A Abrams tank. That I ought to be able to have whatever I want as long as I can afford it. Last story I want to cover, because we're getting right down towards the bottom of the hour. This is kind of a this is off by Cam Edwards off of Bearing Arms, and this is kind of a wow story. It turns out that deputies in Nash County, Carolina, arrested a guy, and he got a gun into the booking area of the jail. He got it there by putting it in a place deputies really, really, really don't want to search. And
otherwise known as the prison wallet.
There you go. And we're talking about a 6-shot revolver. We're not talking about a little tiny Derringer thing. I gotta say, I feel for the deputies that had to recover this thing. And it says in the story that there was a team of deputies that were assigned to recover the firearm. That's certainly not something I would want to do.
Okay, so, they do the cavity search, and I'm just wondering, I don't know. I'm like, how did they know it was in there? But I guess that's a trade secret. Any correctional officers out there, don't send pictures, but maybe just comment and let us know. Don't send pictures.
Please don't. Yeah.
But people who decide that they're going to break the law, it never amazes me, the ingenuity that people will come up with. And I'm like, if you would just use that same level of commitment and ingenuity to get ahead instead of to get over, you could be something.
Yes. I want to get a couple comments in here as we're coming down to the bottom of the hour. Spartan 6 over on the YouTube side says the ATF was created to associate firearms with 2 other purchasable things which are regulated. This automatically makes people think. And then he also said later, when we got to when you were talking about suicide, Craig, maybe they should ban suicide. That ought to work.
Suicide should be made illegal.
Yeah, that'll work,
because that'll stop it.
Yeah, just like making marijuana and drugs like that illegal. That put an end to it right there.
Hey, you know what? We should ban violent crime.
Yes. Armed robbery should be illegal.
Yes. That'll stop it. That'll show them.
All right. Well, we are just about to the end of the half an hour here, man. Before we go, if you would please remind everybody about the rundown and about where they can find your stuff, man.
You can find us. We are on Facebook, YouTube. You can find us at 2A News. You can find us at The Rundown on Facebook. But we're on every day, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. You can also find us on OpsLens. We're on an hour later. You can watch us on OpsLens or watch us on Spotify, or you can listen to us wherever you find your podcast. Just look for the 2A News, or just look for The Rundown, 2A News and conservative views.
And for my part, I want to remind everybody we will be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central Time, with the weather allows us to. And thank you for coming and joining us late. But tomorrow's going to be with Tom Wall's Firearms Academy of Saddle. It's going to be an interesting show. The topic is going to be, you've had to use your firearm in self-defense. The police are on their way. How does that interaction with the police look like? What?
Oh my God!
You
have to tune into that.
Yeah. What should you do once the police show up after you use your firearm in self-defense?
That may save you some time in the pokey.
Yes, absolutely. All right, folks. Thanks for watching. Craig, thanks for joining me again. And everybody, we'll see you tomorrow.